during the break, somebody asked a question about how these links connect with each other. And we need to realize that this is not a linear system. It's not that A leads to B leads to C in terms of causality, that, unawareness causes the karmic impulses and that causes the consciousness. But what we are describing is a type of sequence of how things develop. And so we have a continuum of unawareness. It's going to be there all the time. And with that unless we're totally absorbed in voidness. But anyway, that unawareness is going to be there. And because of unawareness, then there are the tendencies and so on of the disturbing emotions, and they are supported by that unawareness. And now, from the combination of that, we have also the various tendencies and so on of compulsiveness, of karma. And the unawareness and the disturbing emotions will be what should we say? The conditions in which there will be certain, compulsion and so on that will arise. And now we have compulsiveness that brings us into acting in a certain way that leaves aftermath. And then there is a continuum of mental activity, the mental continuum. And that aftermath, well, we can impute it on that mental continuum. And that mental continuum will be loaded in one particular lifetime, and it will continue into a future lifetime in which these things will ripen. Now, we are describing a process. Now, from one point of view, other links will describe a similar type of the same process from another point of view. So these 12 links are not linear, not at all. So try not to hope that they will be linear. It's futile. Okay, you had a question?
I think it's possibly a similar question, but I was curious about when there's a karmic ripening, like for me, was being annoyed. Where is it that, is there a particular spot that karmic ripening goes from being a ripening to being the cause for the next moment?
Right. Is there?
Or is it a fuzzy?
Yeah, she's asking when we have a tendency, and the tendency here, don't think in terms of tendencies to be annoyed. That is a tendency of a disturbing emotion, of annoyance, hostility, anger. We're speaking about the tendencies here of the compulsion to yell at somebody, which of course will be accompanied by anger, but doesn't, it could be accompanied by many, by other disturbing emotions as well. That naivety, if you have just a lot of anger, just express it and scream and yell and stuff like that, and that'll make you feel better. This type of thing, which just reinforces, of course, the anger. Anyway, the actual conditions in which it will ripen will be described by later links in the 12. Now we're just describing the basic mechanism of how the tendencies get planted, to use the more graphic description. And later links will talk about how they ripen. Okay? Fine, then let's go on. Now, we have the mental continuum. Consciousness is how it's described here. And it is going on, individual, subjective mental activity going on into a future lifetime. And in a future lifetime, that's the second half of this third link. This is a resultant level. So now, a future lifetime, and it the next set of links is going to describe the whole development of a fetus and the 5 aggregates. In other words, how does this network of the 5 aggregate factors emerge or develop in a rebirth, so that we now have the whole mechanism for the sequence to repeat itself. Okay, so the 4th link is nameable mental faculties with or without gross form. Okay, so all of these next links are the what are called the ripened results, and the ripened results of the karmic aftermath. Yeah?
Sorry, can you repeat once again how you say it? Nameable mental?
Nameable mental faculties
Faculties.
with or without gross form, because formless realm beings don't have a gross form. They just have the subtlest energy, but we don't really... To be complete, you have to say that. Now, what is going to occur if we speak about these aggregate factors? Remember, we discussed yesterday the 5 aggregate factors that make up each moment of our experience. What is going to ripen now from the karmic aftermath, or tendencies and so on, will be the unspecified ones. Unspecified means that Buddha didn't specify that they were either destructive or constructive, so they are ethically neutral. These are the ones that are going to ripen. The ones that are either constructive or destructive, like anger or love, they're going to ripen from their own tendencies. So we're just now speaking about the ethically neutral basis for experiencing happiness and unhappiness. Right? We talk about suffering and the uncontrollably recurring rebirth. Yes, you have a question?
What would be neutral?
Neutral would be your body. Neutral would be consciousness. Neutral would be distinguishing. We'll speak about them. Neutral will be happiness or unhappiness. Not neutral, destructive would be anger. Constructive would be love. Right? So we're just talking about the mechanical things that are ethically neutral, which of course is very interesting. I mean, there's nothing bad about a body. It's just a body. And there's nothing good or bad, destructive or destructive, about feeling happy or unhappy. It's just a feeling, which allows us to have the attitude of nothing special. So what? I'm unhappy, so what? What do you expect? This is samsara. Sometimes you're going to be unhappy. No big deal. Which is, if you can develop that nothing special mentality, it is very, very helpful. Very helpful. It's like, you bang your toe in the middle of the night, and you get up, and it hurts. Well, so what? What do I expect? Of course it's going to hurt, and okay, you check, it's broken, it's not broken, and then you just go on. You don't cry and jump up and down and wait for your mommy to come and kiss it and make it all better. That's childish. So, nameable mental faculties with or without gross form. This is the undifferentiated consciousness aggregate and the undifferentiated form aggregate of the sperm and egg as the basis for consciousness. The first thing that happens, we're talking about conception. Conception, and from the Buddhist point of view, and let's not get into a deep discussion of this, when the physical basis is developed enough to be able to act as a support for mental activity, for consciousness, just consciousness, that, primary consciousness. But primary consciousness, so that could be the moment of conception. If we want to get into a more medical discussion, maybe it's not that moment of conception. Maybe it is after a certain period that the, what should we say? The sperm and the egg have to, divide and develop and so on to a certain point when it can act as a basis for a consciousness. This is an area that really needs to be investigated more carefully. But in any case, we're talking about that point where you have a form aggregate, so that is not differentiated into sights, sounds, anything like that. Just a basic undifferentiated form aggregate, and consciousness, which is not differentiated yet into seeing, hearing, smelling, anything like that. That's the first step. That's number 4. Then the 5th link is stimulators of cognition.
What?
Stimulators of cognition. Cognition is the most general word for mental activity. Cognition would include knowing, not knowing, being confused, seeing, hearing, smelling, perception, inference, all the emotions that are involved, etc. It's the most general word, cognition. Difficult to translate into some languages. Anyway, these are the stimulators of cognition, which is referring to, it's just a name. Technically, stimulators of cognition are the, within the form aggregate, they are the objects of cognition: sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, not touches, physical sensations, and objects that can be known just by the mind, like sights and sounds that you are aware of in dreams, this type of stuff, and the sensory apparatus that, photosensitive cells of the eyes, maybe with the fetus it's not quite developed yet, but, photosensitive cells, sound-sensitive cells, smell-sensitive cells, taste, physical sensation sensitive, or they don't speak in terms of the brain in the Buddhist analysis, just previous moments that will allow, of mental activity that will allow for being aware of dream objects and stuff like that. So anyway, those are the stimulators of cognition, from which it arises. And so here, at this stage of the development of the fetus, the form aggregate is differentiated now into these sensors and objects, and consciousness as well, which is not a stimulator of cognition, but in any case, consciousness as well will be differentiated into visual consciousness, hearing consciousness, smelling, tasting, physical sensation, and mental consciousness. So at some point in the development of the fetus, that differentiation will occur. Right? Now, the next link, now we're up to number 6. Nameable stimulators of cognition was number 5. Number 6 is called contacting awareness. Many people, you will find, just translate this with the word contact. That is very misleading because you think of contact as a physical thing. Two things contact each other. We're talking about a mental factor. So it is contacting awareness. And what is happening here, first of all, is that the distinguishing aggregate is now differentiated out. Before, at the earlier stage, all you had was awareness of a sense, of a certain type of sense field, rather than just an undifferentiated consciousness of awareness. It was now differentiated, the previous step, into a visual sense field, a hearing sense field, a smelling sense field, and so on. Now, within the sense fields, there's distinguishing of objects. Remember, when we spoke about the aggregates, it's not just a matter of, in sight, seeing colored shapes or pixels of light, that you're able to distinguish objects. So put them together. And distinguishing here is now differentiated out, and contacting awareness is a mental factor with which it differentiates contact with objects as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. It's also, in a sense, coming from karmic tendencies. But why is it, I mean, this contacting awareness is explaining why it is, or how it is, that when I have contacting awareness, let's just use a trivial example of chocolate ice cream, I find that pleasant. So it is a pleasant experience. The technical word in Tibetan is that it comes to mind very easily, very comfortably. And if I come in contact with some other flavor in Germany, where I live, they are obsessed with white asparagus, called Spargel in German. And they are absolutely obsessed with this when it comes into season in the spring. And they even make Spargel ice cream. Asparagus, white asparagus flavored ice cream. So why is it when I come across asparagus flavored ice cream that I find this not attractive? I wouldn't want to have asparagus ice cream. I would like to have, however, chocolate ice cream. So this is contacting awareness. All right. So that is, these are results similar to what we've experienced previously, if you want to look at it in terms of what comes from karma. You know, previously we experienced this as pleasant. You know, it describes why we have certain tastes, you know, that we like this and we don't like that. It's very interesting when you think about it. How we have, each of us, quite individual in terms of what we call in English, our tastes, what we like and what we don't like. So this is contacting awareness. Yeah. And it's neutral. This is the interesting thing. There's nothing destructive about liking asparagus ice cream. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't particularly like it, but if other people like it, fine. Yes?
Okay, so number 6 is when the senses come in contact with the objects, and number 5 is just the...
Well, don't think of it in terms of the senses coming in contact with objects. That is based on the translation of this link as contact, as if it were the physical act of contact. It's not that. The mental factor of distinguishing is operating. So within a sense field, you can distinguish objects, and on the basis of distinguishing objects, we have this mental factor of contacting awareness that experiences it as pleasant or unpleasant. And so when there is the distinguishing of this object, that is accompanied by finding it pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. The way of being aware of something.
But number 5 was the...
Number 5 was the differentiation of the differentiation into sense fields.
Yeah.
And differentiation of consciousness into the different types of consciousness that could be aware of different sensory fields. But within the sense fields, there's no distinguishing of anything. It's just we're talking about, very early stages in the development of a fetus.
Okay.
Yeah, you had a
I'm just
question?
wondering, all these minds or levels of consciousness, are they all going on at the same time?
All what?
These levels of mind or levels of consciousness, are they all happening at the same time? Like if you're tasting the ice cream,
Mhm.
and then you have this distinguishing,
Right.
like this, and then you have an emotion like, or whatever.
Mhm.
All these different levels, do they kind of all come up together?
Well, this is an interesting question. We're tasting the ice cream and then you're distinguishing it as a certain taste. You're just putting it in your mouth and then tasting it, and then you distinguish it, and then you have contacting awareness of it as pleasant, and then all the various emotions and things come up. Are they simultaneous? Well, they're both simultaneous and not simultaneous, to give you a confusing answer. There is no break in the continuum of experiencing things. So it may be in moment one, you experiencing something, and then in moment two you respond to it. That would be sequentially. But responding it in terms of just the variable of liking and disliking, well, you're always liking and disliking and finding things pleasant or unpleasant all the time. Aren't you?
Yeah.
So all these factors are operating simultaneously. And sometimes they may be, like I was saying, the arising of a thought and thinking of a thought. Those are simultaneous. It's not that first the arising of a mental hologram and then seeing it. Well, how would you be able to see it?
Yeah, you are there.
Yeah, so it is happening simultaneously. So tasting it and then finding it pleasant, or is finding it pleasant, occurring at the same time as part of tasting? I would think that it's probably simultaneous. So because what would be your experience when you're tasting it?
Yeah,
If it's
exactly.
not,
Yeah.
finding it pleasant or unpleasant. The moment before the taste of the saliva in your mouth, you might find pleasant or unpleasant, but probably you're not paying attention to that. So that's another mental factor. You're paying attention to that ice cream that you want. So all the factors are simultaneous. Some of them will be sequential, like we'll have here, contacting awareness and then feeling happy about it. You find it pleasant. That seems to be sequential. At least it's described as sequential. So it's a mixture. But all of these, will form a cluster of what's aimed at the same object, and then usually most of them will be simultaneous. Most will be simultaneous. Liking and paying attention and feeling happy about it and so on, they'll all be aimed at the same object and form a network, the 5 aggregates. Okay. Yes?
A really quick question, relating contacting awareness to karma. You said these are the contacting awareness is the result similar to the cause in our experience? Or?
She's asking about what type of result contacting awareness is. It's results that are similar to what we experienced before. We experienced finding, contacting awareness with chocolate ice cream pleasant before, and we're experiencing it again. We still like chocolate. Okay. Then the next one is, and this is the real focus that we're going to work on, is feeling a level of ordinary happiness, unhappiness, or neutral. This is feeling. Link of feeling. And it has to do with somewhere on that scale of happy, unhappy, or neutral. Neutral right in the middle. Usually, it's not, we don't experience neutral very often. It's usually somewhere on one side or another. It's only really when you are in deep, deep meditative trances that you could, these higher levels of absorption, that it's really neutral. But mostly, it's low level. You're feeling happy, you're feeling unhappy. The way to recognize that is that, it's very interesting, this whole phenomenon of feeling. You ask somebody, what are you feeling right now? You feel happy or you feel unhappy? And most people will say, I don't feel anything. I'm not particularly happy, I'm not particularly unhappy, I'm just sitting here. So, how do you demonstrate that this is going on all the time, of happy or unhappy? You look at the definition. Happiness is that feeling which, when it arises, we would like it to continue. We don't want to be parted from that. And unhappiness, when it arises, we would like it to go away, to be parted from that. So, you're looking at something. Why do you look away? Why do you look at something else? Because you want to be parted from it. So that's a very, very low level of unhappiness. Maybe we'd call it boredom, or, it doesn't matter what we call it. But the fact that we look at something and stay with it, well, that's happiness. We look at something else, that was unhappiness. We're dissatisfied with just looking at that. Now we look at something else. So there's always some low level of happiness and unhappiness that's going on. And it's related to contacting awareness of it being pleasant to look at this particular set of colored shapes or pixels, and then looking at something else because now it's unpleasant. What I'm distinguishing in this sense field of pixels. It's interesting if you start to analyze it like that. Okay. That gets into deep philosophical questions, of course. Are we just seeing pixels, or are we actually seeing objects? But anyway, we won't go there. Our discussion. There are differences of opinion on that. Does the world just consist of pixels?
But could it not be that you cannot feel it very clearly because
you can't,
of your awareness?
Okay, you can't feel it very clearly because the mental factor of attention is not strong there. Yeah. You're not paying attention to it. You don't notice it, basically. You're paying attention to something else that's occurring within the aggregates. At other times, when you are in a depression, you very much pay attention to what the feeling aggregate. I'm so unhappy. Okay. And note, as I was saying, that here, this feeling aggregate, it's ethically neutral. Buddha didn't specify, nothing, just happiness and unhappiness, just, what's ripening from previous karma. It's the main thing. The feeling aggregate, that's interesting. It is described as what ripens from previous karma. The feeling of happiness is what ripens from destructive behavior feeling of ordinary happiness comes from constructive behavior. And here we have the suffering of unhappiness, the suffering of suffering, and the suffering of change are ordinary happiness. Okay? Now, we have our system of 5 aggregates. And then also, by now, in the development of the fetus, we have all the other mental factors that are there, this 5th aggregate. So some are destructive, like anger. Some are constructive, like love and affection. Some are also neutral, like concentration or attention or intelligence, something like that. Any questions about this? So that's one set of links. Describe the development of the fetus. How and why are we talking about the development of the fetus? We're talking about uncontrollably recurring aggregates. Remember the suffering, all-pervasive suffering. So this set of links is describing how in each rebirth they evolve so that you get the full set. It's not that instantly you have all 5, except in some of the higher God and God realms, but we're not talking about that. So we're talking about as a human or an animal, this is how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious about how to deal with this unhappiness on a practical level. Like, should you just accept that now I'm unhappy because I'm looking in another place, or now I'm unhappy because I'm in this position that I don't like to be in?
Well, how do we deal with unhappiness, he's saying? And the simplest way, there are many levels of dealing with unhappiness. We are speaking here on the deepest level of how do you get rid of a basis with which you would experience unhappiness or ordinary, unsatisfying happiness. If you get rid of the basis, you're not going to have the experiences. Now, on a provisional level, there are many, many ways in which we can view happiness and unhappiness in terms of our attitude, how we consider it. I'm unhappy, may everybody's unhappiness ripen on me, develop, compassion and sympathy for others, and, there are all sorts of ways of dealing with unhappiness. The one which I find the most useful and easiest to apply is the one of nothing special. I'm unhappy or I'm happy, so what? One has a motivation of an aim. I'll give my own personal example. I work on my website. This is a huge undertaking with 20 language sections, 22 language sections actually, and 125 people working on it, and I supervise and deal with all of that and all the business, the financial aspects and the grant writing, and everything, the whole thing. And I'm working on that great deal of my waking hours. And do I feel happy doing it? Do I feel unhappy doing it? So what? I don't feel joyously happy sitting there at my computer all day long. Not at all. Sometimes, I don't feel like doing it, or this or that. And the attitude is, so what if I don't feel like doing it? It is of benefit to others. It is something which is extremely worthwhile to do. I am 68 years old. Death can come at any time. So, don't mess around. I just do it. So I reaffirm what my aim is, why I'm doing it, and so on, and just do it. And if I feel unhappy, so what? What do you expect? Samsara. Of course, sometimes you're going to feel happy, sometimes you're going to feel unhappy. You have to wash the dishes, and you're not very happy about it, so what? You still have to wash the dishes. You know, you have to change the baby. You know, the baby soiled itself. Are you happy about it? No. Why would you experience that with happy? Oh, how wonderful, I have to change the diaper. You wouldn't feel happy about it. Yeah, you're unhappy. You know, oh, what a mess. But you do it anyway, so what? So if you can carry that attitude, you know, into your daily life, you just get on with your business of what you need to do in terms of, you know, dealing with life in as positive and constructive way as you can. Don't make a big deal out of anything. That is a, you know, a very fundamental way of understanding voidness. You know, voidness. You're making a big deal out of something into something solid and monstrous. This feeling, I don't feel happy. You know? It's behind this whole mentality that you have to be entertained all the time, which is really sick, if you think about it. Me, I have to be entertained. What's that? Underlying drive. Everybody wants to be happy. Okay, you want to be happy, but not entertained, you know, so that me will, it's as if that entertainment will permanently solve our problems. And you want a different entertainment. You don't want the same TV show over and over and over again forever. Because it's entertaining. It's no longer entertaining, is it? Anyway, enough. Any questions? Yes.
I just wonder about, I really like this idea of the so what attitude.
Uh-huh.
And what I could worry about is that when you meet the rest of the world with an attitude like that, for instance, you're working on a project, maybe it's not benefiting others in the same way as your website, but it's your job and you do it together with other people. And if you have this attitude when something goes wrong, or if you have this, okay, so what, it happens, I'm afraid that other people would think that you are not taking things seriously and you're not concerned, or you're not being really, you know...
Oh, no, don't misunderstand the attitude of nothing special into one of not doing anything.
No.
Nothing special means that you don't get upset about it. You don't make a big deal out of it. You just very rationally and calmly deal with it.
Yeah.
Do whatever needs to be done without getting upset.
And if they get upset, it's the...
They get upset, you try, your calmness can help to make them more calm.
Yeah. So it's not...
I mean, give a classic example. Classic example. You're writing an email or you're writing a document on the computer and you press the wrong key and it gets deleted. That happens. Not going to help to get upset. If you don't have an undo function and you can't correct it, well, it's gone. Crying about it is not going to bring it back. Getting upset about it and feeling unhappy is not going to help at all. It's going to be a hindrance. And you just see, okay, then you write it again. And if you are trained well enough so that you can remember what you wrote, you can reproduce it. And maybe the second time it'll be even better.
Yeah.
You just deal with it. Not being a, what we call a drama queen about the whole thing.
So what you're talking about with this kind of, what do you call it, so what or nothing special attitude is more in reference to when I realize that I'm feeling unhappy or unhappy, I can say, hey, well, that's not really anything special. I feel unhappy and happy all day long. And then I can continue to go on with the work that's towards my motivation and my
Right.
best. Is that what you're talking about?
That's what I'm talking about, dealing with ourselves. If I'm feeling unhappy or happy, just getting along with my life, not making a big deal out of it. Now, what about when somebody else is feeling happy or unhappy or upset? The baby is crying, for example. Well, what do you expect? It's a baby. What do you expect? So you don't get upset. Oh, you know, the baby is crying. You don't make a big deal out of it. You just, you know, take care of the baby. You know, why is the baby crying? You know, and whatever has to be done, you do. So it's like that. Other people, you know, you're working with people in your office. Shantideva says it very nicely. He says, people are infantile. And so they get upset. So an attitude is like, well, it's like the baby crying. So what do you expect? You know, so they get upset. So you don't make a big deal out of it, but you try to calm them down and try to bring things more in line with reality. Because getting upset is inflating the existence of something, making it into a big deal. And that's what voidness is all about. You know, there are no big deals. Doesn't correspond to reality. Things happen. That's all. And you just deal with it. And do you have emotions? Sure, but positive emotions. You don't want to have negative ones. Love, compassion, patience, these sort of things, great. Anger, impatience, intolerance, these aren't helpful at all. Yeah.
It seems to me that if you want to take the step further, it would be like from the low jump teachings, actually learning to love your problems or using them as stepping stones.
Right.
But do you think that's unrealistic? I mean, do you think it's more realistic for people on our level to just say, so what? Or do you think we should be ambitious? And
Well, saying we have the Lojong methods of you know, attitude training to change our attitudes, for instance, to view negative circumstances as positive circumstances. These are great methods. But first you have to stop inflating what you're feeling, what the situation is, I think, before you can transform it. It's very difficult to transform it when you have inflated it into such a disaster. There's this disaster. The baby is, you know, soiled its diaper again, you know. Big disaster. Yeah. Before may everybody's soiled diaper, you know, come on me, you know, I have to change everybody's diaper. So, steps. First, you know, the baby soiled itself, himself or herself. So what? You know, it's a baby. So you change the diaper. Now, while changing the diaper, you might not find this pleasant contacting awareness. It doesn't smell nice. Yeah, okay. It doesn't smell nice. So now you can use the Lojong, you know, things. You know, in cleaning the baby, may I be able to clean all the stains and dirtiness of everybody. And in doing this, may it serve as a cause for being able to clean everybody, cleanse everybody. But first, you have to deconstruct it as being a disaster. So, step by step.
Nobody would want to be a Buddhist if they had to change all.
Pardon?
No, it's just a joke. I just said nobody would want to be a Buddhist if you had to change all these steps.
Right. Nobody will want to be a Buddhist if you have to take all the crap of the entire world on yourself. That's true. But you know, as a general principle, if you can use humorous examples of things, it makes a deeper impression than using boring examples. Yes?
I was just wondering, kind of on a kind of daily level or something, like when you experience something unpleasant or problems or something, you say, oh, so what? It's like this. But I mean, for example, take relationships or something. If you're kind of in what you perceive as a destructive relationship,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you kind of combine it with kind of this is not working, this is not beneficial for me now, or maybe it's better for me at my stage to do something else? Say, okay, it's just like this is samsara, or this is this is
No.
this happens,
So if we're in a destructive relationship and things are going badly, do you say, well, you know, so what? This is samsara, etc. No, then you have to, what we want to use is our discriminating awareness, what His Holiness Dalai Lama calls our marvelous human intelligence. To be able to discriminate, is this helpful, is this harmful? Is it beneficial or not beneficial for myself and for the other person? And if it's not beneficial, if it is harmful to both sides, you end it. The point is to be able to think clearly and not on the basis of exaggerations and projections of things onto what's happening that just don't correspond to reality. But sometimes it is better to part, definitely. But make that decision based on clear thinking, clear analysis. Yeah.
At certain levels, can it be a positive thing to actually inflate emotions if they are going on an unconscious level, so they become conscious and then can be dealt with? Because sometimes the emotions can cause problems if they are going on an unconscious level, if we are not in contact with.
Right. So he's asking, is it often we experience emotions on a, he's using the Western term, unconscious level. And is it better in some circumstances to have that be more manifest, bring them out? And I can think of two different cases that we'd have to examine. One is the destructive emotion, and one would be a constructive emotion. So anger or love, for example. So if we have unconscious hostility toward someone, then you want to certainly become aware of it. Now, becoming aware of it doesn't mean necessarily expressing your hostility toward someone. There are, see, again, one has to analyze and differentiate different aspects of what's going on. If somebody does something that is, you're in a relationship and the way that they're acting is very annoying. Let's say I have friends that when I interact with them, when I call them or meet them, I always ask them, how are you doing? You know, what's going on with you and so on. And they never ask me how I am or how I'm doing. Never ask me. So that's annoying. That, you know, they're so self-centered like that, that they don't think, you know, to ask me how I'm doing. Now, there's a difference here. Is there unconscious hostility about that? Well, there may be. But to express that and to get angry with them, you know, you're really selfish, you're terrible, you know, and then that will lead to, you know, compulsively acting in a destructive way and yelling at them. That's not going to help the situation. Time, you know, why don't you ask me how I'm doing without being angry? So I'm not hostile, but I'm trying to deal with that situation. Usually I do that in a joking way. You know, I like to use humor. I find humor is a very helpful media to lighten the situation. So I will say, you know, after they've told me their whole story about how they're doing, and then, you know, they're starting to change the topic and they never ask me about myself. And so, or even at the end of the conversation, I'll say, and how are you doing, Alex? Oh, thank you for asking me. So, like that, it becomes a bit of a joke, and they realize that they need to reciprocate and ask me how I'm doing. So, like that, there's no hostility. So you have to become aware that you have this underlying hostility. I mean, if it didn't bother me, so what? I don't care whether they ask me how I'm doing or not. It's irrelevant. Do I have to tell them what I'm doing? How I'm doing? So what? So in that case, there's no hostility. And it doesn't matter whether they ask me how I'm doing or not. But if it did bother me, then I would want to take steps, but without manifesting the anger. Okay? So that is destructive emotion. What about a constructive emotion? Now, you have to start analyzing that. Now I will ad-lib, because I haven't really analyzed that before. But we have unmanifest, what? Love? What does that mean? We can't talk about a destructive emotion of unmanifest lust and sexual attraction to somebody. I want to get you in bed, or something like that. That's a destructive emotion. So now we have to talk about a really positive emotion. You love your child. Okay? Love your child. How often do you tell the child that? Or how often do you express that love? So do you want to bring that up to a more manifest level? Yes, but then that could be helpful. But then you have to use discriminating awareness. You don't want to smother the child with, you have a teenage child and they're with their friends and you come in, as the mother and, oh, I love you so much, and you hug and kiss them. And they, you embarrass the hell out of them, with their friends. And that is totally inappropriate. Oh, mother, you're such a creep, you're so horrible. So that is not what, you're constantly calling, your child. Well, they're out, now it's my mother again, am I all right? You have to text back. So one uses discriminating awareness to discriminate. When do you express your positive emotion and how do you express it? The way you express it to a 2-year-old is different from the way you express it to a 15-year-old. So the positive ones are okay to express, but again, one doesn't have to be a drama queen, make it a dramatic show. You're not putting on a, more subtle levels are okay. Then it gets into another topic, which I think is very, very helpful, which a friend of mine who's a psychiatrist pointed out to me in his theories, that you have to learn to accept, he uses economic images, that people have different currencies and they will pay with different currencies. And you have to learn to be able to accept their currency. So, for example, that some people show their affection physically by hugging and kissing. Other people show their love and concern by taking care of you. They're not so, physically affectionate, but they take care of you. A classic example will be, maybe not so much in the present generations, but in older generations, the father usually was not terribly affectionate with the children. But the father expressed his love for the children by the fact that he went out and worked and earned all the money and provided for everything for the child and took care of whatever the needs of the child was. And this is the currency that the father pays in. And as a child, or as an adult even, later on, you have to recognize that my father did love me and did show his concern and care. He might not have paid in the currency that I would have liked or preferred of, hugging me or saying how much he loved me or stuff like that, but He did show affection, so you learn to accept different currencies, paying in krona here in Denmark and not in euros. Money is still money, and different people show their affection in different ways. Okay? Anything else? We have 5 more minutes, and certainly not appropriate to start another topic. Yes?
What if the story you told about your friends that never asked about how you were, what if you don't get hostile or angry, but sad?
Mm-hmm.
You have a need or whatever, you have an attachment to their considering you and how you are. It doesn't make you angry or anything, you don't want to shout, you just feel a little sad about it, less loved or less, you can still of course say it, but if they don't change or they don't pick up your little kind suggestion, how can you deal with that sadness? Is that trying to get over your own attachment towards these things? Or?
Right. To overcome that sadness when the other person doesn't pay attention to you, there are 2 types of sadness. There's the sadness which is self-cherishing. I'm sad because they're not paying attention to me. I'm not angry about it, but I'm sad. I wish they would pay attention to me. That's based on just thinking of me, me, me. That's unhappiness.
Yeah.
Now, you could be sad that they are not concerned about me as an example. Don't take it personally.
Yeah.
That they have, they're so self-centered. And so that you're sad that they have that problem.
Yeah.
And then that leads you to develop compassion for them. And then to think of ways to try to help them. It's not so much, poor me, I'm sad. If it's just concerned about me, I'm sad that people don't pay attention to me, then we have to really work on, even if they did pay attention to me, what do I want? Paparazzi around taking pictures of me all the time? That so much attention is paid to me, then, please, don't pay attention to me. It's not going to satisfy, even if they pay attention to us. It's ordinary happiness. Then they pay too much attention. Asking every 5 minutes, how are you? You feel okay? Is everything all right? Yeah. The mother that's asking the child, the sick child, every 5 minutes how they are. Yes.
But a comment on hers, I think I find in my relationship, it can be good to talk about the currencies, oh, I like this and you like this, so we become aware of our likes and dislikes. And, so that can actually, then you can work on each other's likes. So it's good to talk about it, communicate it, so you can create an awareness.
Right. If it is an ongoing relationship and the other person is receptive,
exactly.
Then you could speak about, well, I like affection shown in this way and the other person likes affection shown on that way. That is in a partnership relationship. It doesn't work with a child-parent relationship very well. And if the parent is already deceased and you're looking back at your childhood, also, it's not up for a negotiation. So you have to see, are the 2 people involved, basically, fairly equal status that they could, change and deal with that. Or, your boss never asks you at work how you are. Well, you don't negotiate with the boss. That the boss should be concerned about, is that really too much work? That's really too much work that you're giving to me. I'm not very happy about that. So you have to see the situation. Discriminating awareness. Yeah.
Okay, voidness, and with voidness you don't have any, you don't have to take anything seriously, but let's assume...
Oh no, you do take things seriously. With voidness, you take things completely.
You don't have to make a big deal out of anything.
You don't make a big deal out of anything.
But let's say that we haven't realized voidness completely yet.
You haven't realized voidness completely.
These people... I'm just trying to help. So let's assume that we still feel like we have like very real reasons, and maybe not even exaggerated reasons to be angry, sad, whatever. How do we avoid that this system of not expressing and so on turns into depression? Because we know there is a mechanism by which if you eat a lot of it, as we like to think of it, you turn it inwards.
Right, yeah, so he's saying, you know, repression, when we haven't realized any, attained any level of realization of voidness and so on, and we're just repressing hostility and so on, then of course it gets turned inward, you know, toward ourselves, and can cause all sorts of troubles. So what do we do then? If we're going to manifest it, if it has to be expressed, then again, use discriminating awareness to choose the appropriate time. You know, when the other person is really, really upset or very, very busy, that's not the time to express it. So use your intelligence to see when would be the most appropriate time to express it. And don't express it when it is too strong, you know, because then it can get out of control. So it all comes down to using your intelligence. When will it be helpful? What is the appropriate time? You know, the other person is really exhausted and just wants to go to sleep, is half asleep. That's not the time to go into a deep and meaningful conversation about their insensitivity. You know? So, or they're really super busy at work. Not the time. Okay? So, then let us end our morning session, and we'll continue with the next links in the afternoon.